Hi YouTube, welcome back to my channel. What a couple of weeks it has been. Very, very exciting news. I'm a fiance now. And obviously aside from the fact that I've now got a wedding to plan, which is incredibly exciting stuff, we've also been celebrating with friends and family. It's just been a really wonderful little time. Anyway, I do digress. This is a fitness channel after all. Today I wanted to talk to you about something that I've been raising a lot recently with clients who are thinking about starting a deficit or a fat loss phase. I think, again, one of the things when it comes to dieting that is often missed is expectation setting and really understanding what a diet should be and also what it shouldn't be. So the first thing I want to make really clear is that a diet isn't necessarily easy. Like, there will be things that feel like a bit of a struggle at times. And I guess I wanted to kind of set you up with everything that I think you should know so that you can get your expectations in line. And just knowing these things up front will save you a lot of frustration down the line. I do think, for what it's worth, dieting in general and advice around fat loss is a lot better than it used to be. It's less about fad diets and eating as little as possible, and it's a little more kind of nuanced and intentional and built around healthy habits. And obviously all of that is great. But like a lot of fitness trends, I think the pendulum might have swung too far the other way around how fat loss should be completely free of restriction and an absolute walk in the park. And that just isn't quite the case. So what are the things that you should know about fat loss to set your expectations in the right spot? Firstly, some hunger is normal. Hunger is part of the process. And a lot of people will feel some mild hunger and start to panic, thinking that you need to eat straight away. Now, when we're in a moderate deficit, which is what I'd recommend, hunger should be mild and manageable, but it will be present. One of my rules of thumb for knowing a deficit is in the right spot is you certainly should not be constantly hungry all day long. But what you can expect is to feel ready for your next meal when it rolls around. And something that's really helpful here is trying to learn the difference between physical hunger and emotional hunger. Physical hunger is something that builds quite gradually. Usually happens a few hours after eating, and really at that point, anything sounds good. Like you would eat a plate of broccoli because you're hungry. Not to suggest that you should, but you would. And then there's that kind of emotional or reward-based hunger. That tends to come on a lot more quickly, usually for a very specific food, and it often has nothing to do with energy needs. It's more likely driven by cravings or stress, or often boredom. So if hunger is constant or it's disrupting your sleep, that is a red flag. It could mean that your calorie deficit is too aggressive, that you're not getting enough protein, or your diet is too focused around processed foods. So really, when it comes to hunger in a deficit, I'd encourage you to just be a bit curious about it. Consider leaning into accepting some of that mild discomfort and try reframing it. I'm noticing that I'm a bit hungry. That makes sense. I'm in a calorie deficit and my goal is fat loss. Maybe you could ask yourself, when was the last time I ate? If the answer is 3 or 4 hours ago, then you're likely physically hungry and it might be time for your next meal. If you know full well that you've just finished dinner and it was satisfying and you just want to smash a load of biscuits, that is more likely reward hunger. It's also worth just taking the time to slow down a little bit. Give yourself 5 minutes between that initial trigger and your response being running to the biscuit drawer. If you're still hungry after that little pause and you've had a few hours since your last meal, then go ahead and eat something. If at that point you're still really craving that specific type of food, then you might want to think about what other tools you have in your toolbox that isn't food related that can give you that same type of comfort or happiness. Maybe you go for a walk. Maybe you give your dog a cuddle, maybe you call your mum, whatever works for you. But it's worth having other tools available that aren't just food related, particularly when your goal is fat loss. Okay, I've also got to mention this one, and this is something that's come up a lot recently. When you're looking at the progress you make week to week, we should not be expecting earth-shattering results on a weekly basis. A moderate deficit, which again is what I would recommend, leads to moderate progress. Now that doesn't sound all that exciting, does it? But honestly, that is the truth. A moderate deficit usually means eating between 10 and 20% less calories than you would at maintenance. Doesn't sound like a lot, does it? Now that deficit would usually equate to roughly half a kilo to a kilo, or roughly a pound to 2 pounds for the Americans out there, of weight loss per week. So if you know that that is where your deficit sits, then that is what you should expect in the form of results. And you might ask, well, why don't I just push a little bit deeper and go for a 25 or a 30% deficit? Well, because that normally backfires. And if you're watching this video as someone who has had multiple failed attempts at fat loss, it could well be that your previous deficit attempt was just too drastic. Slower and consistent fat loss is far better than losing a shit ton of weight and then inevitably regaining it. I would go as far to say that 99% of people are not immune to this. And it's letting those scale fluctuations get in your head. The simplest way I can put it is that your weight will fluctuate on a daily basis and that there is nothing you can do about that. It is a completely normal response for a human body that is continuously performing millions of biological processes in order to keep you alive. Some very common causes as to why those scales will fluctuate are things like where you are in your menstrual cycle, changes to your body's water content. So if you've eaten more carbs or more salt than usual, expect there to be a little bit of water hanging around. Food volume that is still in your digestive system. A little bit of extra inflammation following a difficult training session, for example. A couple of nights of bad sleep, particularly stressful periods. The list goes on. So when I coach fat loss, I would recommend weighing regularly, every day if you can, if not a minimum of 3 to 4 times a week. What we then do is take the lowest weight across a 7-day period. The lowest one is the only one we pay attention to. The rest is just noise. If you are in a deficit, you will always see this wiggly shaped line. What matters is what direction that line is traveling in. If the line is tracking horizontally over multiple weeks, you're not in a deficit. So tweak, adjust, and try again. When you see it start to trend downwards, that's when you know you're in the right spot. All of these are examples of fat loss journeys that my clients have been on with me recently. And you will see they are all wiggly. But we learn to look at the zoomed out picture, take that lowest weight across each 7-day period so that we can see whether we're tracking against that rough guideline of half a kilo to a kilo per week. It's also pretty normal to expect a slight dip in your overall energy levels. When you eat less, your body has less immediate fuel to burn. So you might expect slightly slower recovery from your workouts, a little more need for sleep, a bit less enthusiasm for non-essential activities. And this is where sleep and stress management can make a massive difference. This advice is only for those people who are currently in control of how much sleep they get. I'm sorry, new parents, your time will come. But we do want to be aiming for 7 to 9 hours each night. Think about limiting your caffeine to before 2 p.m. and plan in some downtime at the end of your day to help you get off to sleep. I actually like to give myself a bedtime, like I'm a child. If I know I have to be up at 6, then that sadly means I got to be asleep by 10, or at least aim to be. So at 9 p.m, my alarm will go off, telling me it is almost time for bed. In that hour, I will make sure I'm doing things that help me get off to a good night's sleep. That does not mean scrolling on your phone or binge watching another episode of your latest Netflix series. It means creating a calm environment, reducing screens, maybe doing some reading, something that's going to help you drift off and calm your mind. You should also expect some compromise, not sacrifice, but compromise. You are going to need to make some choices. You cannot just go about your normal life as you would at maintenance and expect fat loss to happen. You may well have to limit the amount of alcohol you drink at the weekend. You may need to think about reducing your takeaway intake. You may need to skip or share dessert for a little while. But as I say, this is compromise. You're not forbidding yourself to do anything that you would normally do at maintenance. You're just thinking about how you can make smarter swaps to leave that calorie deficit in place. Something I tend to do with clients, if we're thinking about social events, is to put them on a bit of a scale. How important is that event to you? Your best friend's wedding, probably pretty important. Fat loss probably doesn't even come into the picture on that day. A bog standard meal out with a colleague on a Tuesday night at a pub you go to all the time, you probably don't need to go hell for leather there. So now we know what to expect, let's talk about the things that a fat loss phase should not be. It should not be never ending. You should have a finish date in mind, at least roughly. Long-term dieting can lead to hormonal issues, muscle loss, and mental burnout. We should see diets as a pit stop. Maintenance is the journey. Also, I'm going to say it, if your goal is toned, lean and toned, you have no business dieting if you've never really lived at maintenance. Maintenance will allow your body to recover, and crucially, it will allow you to build muscle mass, lean mass. And that's the thing that actually changes your physique. When it comes to that dieting phase, you're revealing something, not just a slightly smaller version of you. It should also not be completely different to how you live your life at maintenance. If you feel like you've got to upend your entire life as soon as you step into a deficit, then you're doing maintenance wrong. Your habits should remain the same. We're prioritizing protein. We're getting in lots of fiber. We're strength training. We're moving a lot throughout the day. We're getting decent sleep most of the time. These are the core pillars, whether you're losing fat or you're maintaining. A deficit really should mean just slightly less food. Everything else is a constant. So all that to say, if you go into your fat loss phase expecting a little bit of hunger, knowing that the scale will fluctuate, and accepting that you will need to make the occasional compromise, you will be so much less likely to quit when things don't go perfectly. We want to keep it moderate, keep it sustainable. The real goal is a body and a lifestyle that you can actually maintain in the long term. If you are someone who finds fat loss to be a never-ending battle that you just cannot seem to get right, I am just a couple of weeks out of launching my next intake of the Recomp Blueprint. As you saw earlier in the video, we've made some incredible progress in the last intake. And truly, I built this so that it's the last diet you ever have to do. The slow way is the fast way if you only have to do it once. If you want to add your name to the priority list, which is where all of the early access spaces are sent to, comment Recomp below and I'll be in touch. And that is it for this week. I hope you found this helpful. Remember to like and subscribe, and drop me a follow on Instagram if you don't already. Sorry, I keep getting distracted. I'll see you next time. Love you, bye.